this next session is actually going to be diving into how marketers are building a modern stack to power a cross-channel and cross-platform strategy. I'm really excited about this panel because specifically, this will look into the different types of components that they would have to consider when building their stack as it relates to scale, but also specifically, we really wanted to take in the cross-platform approach and look at how that approach actually differs when you're coming from a mobile-first approach or actually also coming in from a web-first approach. Moderating this session will be our SVP of Sales, Dominic Kelly, joined by Tim, Head of Growth at Riot, Noah from Her, Guillaume McIntyre from Instacart, and Mr. James Peng.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Susan. Wow, it's so many familiar faces here. It's really exciting to see so many powerhouses within the marketing industry. And it's also very exciting to do this panel today. I know most of you pretty well, so it's great to see you again. I think perhaps just as an introduction, and to start off, maybe we can start with you, Guillaume. Just give us a sense of your role and your responsibilities at Instacart. That'd be great.
Sure. So my name is Guillaume.
You need a microphone there. Sorry. Yeah. Are we on? Should be on. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Guillaume McIntyre. I'm the head of digital marketing at Instacart. So my team oversees both consumer marketing as well as shopper marketing. Shopper marketing being the acquisition and marketing to our shoppers and delivery people. And I also oversee our organic, social, as well as engagement marketing.
Thank you.
Hello. Tim Su, I'm at Riot Games. Our main product is League of Legends. My team is cross-functional growth, so we have a growth marketing piece that is responsible for user acquisition as well as churn mitigation as well as revival, so bringing people back, and sort of the lifecycle management of that all. And then on the other half, it's growth product, so product managers and engineers who are building products specifically with the game in mind to drive the similar outcomes. So both bringing people in, onboarding them, and retaining them. We focus mainly on League of Legends as a primary product, but we have purview over some other titles that we have in development. So as we launch more, we'll think about that at a portfolio level.
Thank you. Oh.
Thanks. Hi, good morning.
I think you're good. Yeah.
I'm on. All right. Thank you so much to the Singular team for having us. My name is Noah Gutterman. I oversee growth marketing for Her, the dating app for queer women. I oversee user acquisition from a growth perspective, as well as organic social, and I also run interference on PR. I come from the news world, so it's kind of like my sweet spot is to get back in with reporters.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. I'm James Peng. I'm a digital acquisition consultant. Work with many companies that are rapidly growing to build out and strategize around digital acquisition. And key areas I focus on are cross-platform acquisition as well as user targeting across the ecosystem and different supply sources. Work with a variety of companies such as, Simple Habit, Coffee Meets Bagel, Rumi, just to name a few.
Thank you, James. Thanks a lot. So I'm going to ask these guys some questions. We're going to be focusing on the marketing stack. Obviously, this is the topic of this session. But at the end, I would love for the audience to raise a hand and ask some questions. I think it's a great opportunity to pick the brains of these individuals here. So just as a side note. Okay, so just kicking it off, and I think, again, we're talking about the stack. Probably the first question for me, and maybe we can start with you, James, is thinking about solutions, or how many solutions you guys are currently leveraging across your marketing and growth efforts. I know for you it's somewhat nuanced, but in your experience and other companies.
So I do see a variety of growth stacks, and one thing's consistent is that most of the companies that I work with tend to have at least 10 solutions just for their kind of marketing solution, marketing just kind of infrastructure. So going from like CRM to email to reporting to tracking, basically all these solutions outside of ad networks is at least 10 easily. Mm-hmm. That match we previously had, I think, over 15 just for non-supply sources. So, you can see that consistently that's an issue that there's, kind of a ton of vendors that you need to work with.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, it'd be great to hear from you as well, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So we run about 10 to 15 solutions at any given time. And I think for a dating app, James can also probably speak to this, but we look at solutions that are a little bit different than what you might look at for a gaming company or for a more traditional company. We obviously spend the most of our money on Google and Facebook, like I think almost everyone else does, but we often look to sources that are underutilized, and especially to target our market, which is queer women, which is a very specific demographic. So we look at places like porn websites that have advertising inventory that's available and is a very compelling case for queer women to go from accessing that type of content to downloading an app to meet people in real life. So I always tell people when we talk about sources for growth for a dating app that more often than not, sources that are non-traditional and underutilized are going to be better.
Thank you. Interesting. And Tim?
So in our current situation, I'd probably say something like 24 if you include ad sources as well as the various pieces. James talked about some of them: CRM, email, various analytics platforms, visualization platforms. I think that's pretty consistent. I'd say so. In my previous history, we had more supply sources in places we were getting traffic from. Riot and League of Legends specifically is a PC-based game and it doesn't have a mobile component.
Yeah.
But previously when I was at Twitter or when I was at Zynga, when we were mobile first and much more heavily mobile. I'd say that number was probably more like 36.
Yeah. Wow.
Because of the inventory sources.
Yeah, it's complex.
Yeah.
Thank you, Guillaume.
So I think we have about a dozen or so. So we are available across all digital channels such as affiliate marketing, email, paid social, organic, and so for a lot of those channels we need different solutions, right? So we need an engagement solution, we need data visualization, we need mobile attribution, and so as we continue to scale, we have to add additional solutions.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe just focusing back on you, Guillaume, we've had many conversations in the past, and knowing that you have a complex team, you've got two different focuses. So you've got the kind of that dual market, so you've got the shopper marketing and the consumer marketing side. And then in addition, you're spending heavily across both the mobile activity and also in web activity as well. It's complex, right? Could you break down how your marketing stack has evolved over that time when thinking about the complexities for that dual-sided marketplace and also the cross-channel activities that you're running?
Sure. So I guess to start, one of the things that is pretty unique about Instacart is that the company is now about 6 years old. But for the first 5 years, the company grew almost entirely through word of mouth and organically. And so marketing really started just about a year ago when I joined. And so instead of going out and start licensing a bunch of tools, what we decided to do instead is to really focus on the things that we need at the time. And so when we first started off, we marketed primarily on desktop. And so we really, didn't have many tools, right? We would bring the data in-house, visualize it using Tableau, accessing the data on Redshift, and using, I think, just one simple tool such as Branch to do deep linking. And then as we explored additional channels, of course, moving into mobile, we had to bring on board an MMP. And so we brought on Kochava, and then after that we looked into affiliate marketing, and we had to work with we had to pick a solution, and we went with Impact Radius. And so currently we are also talking to Singular to as we think about being more efficient around by bringing data internally and accessing the data and using that data to optimize our campaigns. And so every time we scale additional channels, we try our best to assess what's available out there in terms of solutions and what solutions will best meet our needs.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe, Tim, we can ask you a question as it relates to your focus and how that shift over time. I think for Singular and us as an organization, we got our start in mobile, and we evolved to offer a more holistic solution to marketers, because that problem isn't just resigned to mobile. So for you, thinking about your focus from desktop into mobile and that expansion, how's that had an impact on the type of tools that you're testing and you're looking to leverage, and how do they differ, I suppose, from those tools that exist in desktop when you're making that expansion to mobile?
Yeah, so I think the main difference in really where you see the fork is in identity resolution for desktop and mobile. Like Guillaume just mentioned, when they started doing more mobile work, they had to go with an MMP. So attribution at the user level is a bit different on mobile, and we haven't seen, I think, necessarily the unified platforms yet that do that resolution across, and there have been a few attempts, and I think we're getting there as an industry, but collecting those data points separately, I think largely see a lot of mirroring between what you want, because ultimately you want to collect the same kinds of signal across mobile and desktop.
Yeah.
And as marketing technology providers have evolved, you're kind of seeing that they are platform focused. So you have people doing very similar things, mirroring the desktop world on mobile, collecting similar data points, so doing various telemetry and whatnot. So for us, it is in a lot of ways partnering with mobile providers who are doing very similar things in terms of who are these people, what are the activities they're performing downstream in the application, how do we take that signal, layer some intelligence on top of it, and sort of then provide some kind of let's say optimized journey or path that we want people to take.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's not entirely that dissimilar, because people want the same kinds of outcomes. The customer doesn't think in platforms; they're platform agnostic. They're just thinking that they're engaging with their brand or your product or service.
Yes.
So we have to kind of figure out how to stitch together those various things. So I'd say it's not entirely a different set of solutions. It's just that they're in many cases they're mobile specific.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. It's interesting. Okay. Maybe this question for all you guys, and we're going to start with James. So, as Gutty was talking about in the introduction here this morning, marketing data is growing at an incredibly fast rate. Thanks to all of these tools that we have to elect and to leverage within the marketing stack, we have this data explosion. But as we've been discussing, this seems that it's an overwhelming problem, right? It's affecting how we think about scale. It's affecting how we run our business efficiently, and it makes it difficult to understand the impact of those initiatives cross-platform. So maybe, Noah, for you could just walk us through how you currently manage that challenge, that data explosion challenge, and having that visibility across all of those initiatives.
Yeah, absolutely. So not well is the easy answer. I think that it's incredibly hard to get accurate and consistent data across many different channels every day, day over day, week over week. We are constantly having problems where one source doesn't match up to another. The spends are different, the CPIs are different, and the LTV is different. So we've done a lot of internal work to partner with several tools. We use Branch for our deep linking and our source attribution, and we also use Tableau for our visualization, but working internally with our data viz team to figure out how to segment user behavior by attribution channel over 24-hour retention, 7-day, 30-day, and upgrading to our premium subscription feature. And it's been a really interesting process for us to try to figure out if we can prevent drop-off and re-engage lapsed users by figuring out by channel when they're most likely to drop off and then basically circumventing that drop-off. It's been many, many months in the making, and it's not perfect yet by any means.
Yeah.
But it's really helped us to figure out alternative ways in-app through in-app messaging and actually inbox messaging directly to people,
Yeah.
As well as email and push to see if we can really prevent that drop-off. With dating apps, almost everyone is on more than 2 apps who is a consistent dating app customer, and most of them drop off. So it's really difficult to get people to stick around. And so we've worked really hard to figure out if there are ways both through our app and then also our live events, which we'll talk about a little bit later, if we
Yeah.
can prevent that drop-off and make our brand as engaging as it possibly can be to people, that we can make it more than just a dating app, and that it really can be more of like a community that you care about and you feel strong affiliation to the brand.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's kind of that notion of moving from a manual process to being more automated.
Exactly.
What you're doing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, thank
And
you.
if we can do that, then it reduces my team's time and we can
Right.
actually focus on other
That's the
things.
holy grail. Yeah. Hey, James, what about you, sir?
Yeah, sure. I think you bring a lot of good points. I think one of the great ones you brought up is the segmentation is going to be really critical, especially when you think about kind of moving a business cross-platform. Because
Yeah.
once you have like an app as well as like a web product, you start to need to really be serious about standardizing and segmenting those actions and kind of making it consistent across product. Otherwise, you're going to get lost really quickly. So that I think that's definitely like one of the first steps. Automation is going to be one of the key in order to kind of reduce and reduce kind of the ETL you're doing, the amount of ingestion you're doing, and just margin of error. You have to automate as
Yeah.
many processes in order to reduce the amount of sheer manual effort and error that's probably going to happen as a result of that.
Yeah.
And probably the last piece of it is along with automation, simplification. I think when, kind of, for example, switching a platform to mobile, you naturally have to bring on an MMP. But at the same time, I think you should ask yourself, is there a way to kind of simplify your overall stack across like desktop and mobile when you think about this?
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that I definitely have to keep in mind when I think about bringing on new solutions is also like what other ones are, becoming obsolete / can be removed.
Yeah.
So I think all these are definitely critical when you're thinking about starting to go not only cross-channel, but cross-platform.
Yeah. And then thinking about how to streamline those technologies, right? To your point, how do you consolidate as well so you don't have this bloating of technology platforms that many of them being redundant as well to what you need at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, for example, like, we brought on a solution as an MMP. We also brought on actually at Match, Singular was a source solution for reporting, and also kind of replaced the need for the same solution on desktop side. Yeah. And kind of what was interesting there was the solution actually solved for web as well as mobile at the same time. That actually was a nice plus when I created the solution was it was a mobile first product, and so the way that the product was built was really with the install first, which is actually a really interesting angle because most of the desktop solutions were built the other way around. And so kind of as our world has shifted from kind of web registration first to a app first, the first inception of a user is no longer that registration point. So your whole infrastructure needs to adapt and move up a level in order for you to successfully function and think about where a user really starts in your platform.
Yeah, thank you. It's very interesting. Guillaume, how does your team access the data?
Yeah, so for us, since we currently pull most of the data internally, and we have a relatively limited data analytics team, and so the way we go about it is we really prioritize what data we need to bring in internally to analyze and that will help us make the right business decisions versus trying to bring on everything, because as soon as you bring on all data sources, then the complexity increases significantly, right? And the chances that the data is not accurate or the data pipelines break also increases, right? And so I think it's really about, to James' point, how do you simplify and how do you prioritize what you really need versus trying to do it all at once?
Yeah, it's a great point. Thank you. Maybe Tim, just to finish off this section, for you, what's the best solution?
Well, given that I was an early customer of Singular when I was at Twitter, In all seriousness, I think Guillaume makes a good point, which is we tend to think in 80-20 as well, which is you're going to get a lot of value out of the first kind of tranche of data that you use. Just talking about my experience at Twitter, we were probably using 24 supply sources because we were doing global work. And that's on mobile. I mean, it's from exchanges, DSPs, networks, and direct buys in some cases. So the data explosion stuff that Gotti talked about was very, very visceral and very real for us. The reason we ended up partnering with Singular and being a customer was because I had my data science pod doing that work, the work that Singular basically had built as a platform. And for me, it's the opportunity cost of what they could be doing otherwise, right? I really needed them to be, frankly, to drive the insights around what we were getting out of that data, and frankly, doing the modeling and some of the predictive analytics that we were using to actually inform our roadmap and sort of how we wanted to take our marketing activities forward. So, for me, it was a pretty simple decision point at that point, which is partnering with a platform that has done the integrations, that has the data sanitization. I mean, the cleanliness and the standardization is big, right? And then using the team internally to actually look at that and say, okay, well, what are we seeing here? What patterns are we recognizing, and how do we take this and inform our activities? Yeah. So for us, it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I like the way that you frame that value piece, which is, yes, we're saving time, but it's the opportunity cost, right? Of your team, how are they spending their time? Are they spending their time aggregating data, or are they growing your business? Yeah,
there's probably a lot of people here who do some amount of product work as well. One of the product frameworks is called Moscow, and must, should, could, won't. Right. So just because you can do something doesn't mean that you necessarily should be doing it, right? Yeah. So, I run into this problem in a lot of companies, because when you're at product engineering-led companies, I think there's a lot of internal. It's part of the DNA, which is great. But the double-edged sword is like, hey, we could totally build that thing. Why do you need to go and pay money for this thing? We could build it internally. I'm like, it's not as easy as you think, and there's maintenance behind it, and people build stuff and they don't maintain it. So the trade-off there is like, we could do this, but what else could we be doing instead? Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, thank you. So the next theme here, just thinking about that, the understanding of, I suppose, cross-platform metrics, and a question for you, Noah. So you mentioned earlier that her hosts over 100 events a year across the world. As if measuring and connecting data across mobile and desktop marketing activities wasn't enough, you have to deal with offline as well. So that seems pretty complex. So tell us about that. So how are you currently doing this? What have you solved as it relates to that, I suppose, that kind of more holistic cross-channel approach? And what is yet to be solved?
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to start off when I talk about live events by telling one of my favorite dating app stories, which is that as a dating app, we are working really hard to overcome a lot of challenges that aren't present for other technologies. The first being that queer identity, we serve the queer female space. For those of you who don't know, queer is a bucket term that encompasses all gay identities. So you can be a gay man, you can be a gay woman. Queer is a term that we use because it doesn't require a label. So anyone who uses our app is a queer person. So we have to overcome the idea that in a lot of areas of this country, in a lot of areas of the world, being queer is not safe, it's not accepted. So that's a major challenge we work to overcome. Yeah. And also more generally with a dating app, you have to overcome the idea that a dating app is not still a totally socially accepted thing. People are still really anxious and nervous to tell their parents and their friends and their family that they met their partner on a dating app. One of my dear friends, her name is Naomi, she met her now fiance on a dating app, and this is really a true story, I know her, rather than to tell people that she met her boyfriend on a dating app, she told people that they met in Paris, in the dark, on a bridge in the
Wow.
rain while the song Claire de Lune was playing. And like, I just don't understand, like, why is that less creepy than meeting someone who you've already pre-vetted based on their profile? I will never understand it. But this is a major challenge that we have to overcome. And so live events for us were a way both to bring the queer community together, to provide a space for networking and friendship and partying, and also to be a brand that was cool, that you could go to a live event and say, like, I met someone, I met a friend, I met a one-night stand, I met a partner, I met a wife in person at an event, rather than just online through this digital product. In terms of assessing metrics that come from live events, it's a big struggle. The best use case that I can give you is when we launched in Australia. We worked on running live events in Melbourne and in Sydney and trying to compare the data that we got from the two of those. Just as a note, all of our live events are incredibly tailored to the city that they're in. So like in Melbourne, we run camping trips. In Montreal, we run raves. In Minneapolis, we run dog petting parties. Like, they are incredibly tailored to that unique space. And we look at the data for those live events, and we figured out that in this one specific use case, which we've now extrapolated and applied that data to all of our other markets, if you attend to her live events in person, you're 50% more likely to upgrade to our premium feature. That data took a long time to put together and a lot of work. And what we realized is the piece that we were missing was data that comes in through the ticketing platform. If you run live events, you almost certainly use Eventbrite for your ticket sales. And there's a lot of data missing. And so what we're doing right now is actually working on building an internal tool for data measurement through ticket sales that we could then basically give to other companies who are really looking to this, especially other companies in the queer space who run smaller events, need a lot of help with figuring out where their users are coming from. So by building this technology, we'll hopefully be able to target people much more closely based on how they came in, where they bought their ticket, how far in advance they bought their ticket, and also be able to figure out for us what the ROI is on having someone come to a live event versus downloading our digital product versus being served an ad or upgrading to our premium feature. So it's absolutely a work in progress, but we're working really hard to be able to dive deep into that data. Live events are such a key part of our business, and we want to make sure that we have the same amount of data on those users as we do our traditional users. Yeah,
that's really interesting. I'm also a little bit worried about your friend Naomi as well.
Well, she is engaged now. They are planning a wedding.
That's good. It worked out in the end. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so maybe a question for you, James. So a lot of the audience is coming from a mobile-first strategy. But your experience at Match was quite different, right? So thinking about that move or that shift from desktop into mobile, can you talk about how you really had to think about taking a marketing strategy from desktop to mobile, right? And how you were able to make that, I suppose, that move seamless or as seamless as possible?
It's definitely not seamless.
Okay.
So maybe it's a little bit of a continuation of earlier thought, which was, so Match is a 22-decade-old business, and with its roots in web, when most solutions that are available today just weren't there. So again, we kind of piled on the marketing stack, when we didn't want to. And one of my key roles and responsibilities when I joined Match was to pivot not only their budget strategy but also the stack to kind of adapt to mobile and app first. And so that was one of the biggest difficulties because, we had always thought about, again, that inception of the user at that registration point. So I think not only integrating the MMP, but also how the MMP affects attribution down the road was a huge step. But also kind of how to consolidate data across the various sources, as well as to consolidate the back-end data plus the front-end data, like attribution plus the actual return that those users are driving was a huge pain point, especially when you're thinking cross-platform. So we set up part of these things that needed to be done manually, but I think to reduce the pain as much as possible, tried to think about a solution that could solve some of these like cross-platform like reporting. For example, we'd actually we're setting up kind of automated reporting through APIs or through kind of like CSV ingestion from various vendors in the web space. And now by bringing in for example, Singular, which was actually a mobile-first solution, but was built with reporting in mind first. It was a way to kind of attack that entire structure and to allow reporting across all the different platforms in a linear fashion. And so that was a way that we had solved this issue. But we're able to kind of work our way up the stack by solving a problem that we already had, across multiple platforms. So that's just, obviously, I think there's a lot more pieces to solve, and that's just one part of it. But I think one of the pieces that also, benefited a lot from was, the attribution piece, having both your attribution provider plus reporting in the same position reduces the need to also have to standardize those events and macros and your backend to kind of preemptively avoid some of the complications and discrepancies that you're going to see.
Yeah, and then making decisions on bad data, right? Obviously.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So, Tim, for you, how do you think the marketing stack is going to evolve in the next, coming years, like the next 12 months, 24 months? How do you think it's going to change, and what's it going to look like?
I think Gotti and Susan both talked about this a little bit in their opening comments. I'm sure many people are familiar with Scott Brinker's marketing technology landscape. So one of the data points earlier was, the digital marketing space, $230 billion, grew 20% year over year, that one slide.
Yeah.
The MarTech landscape has grown, I think, over 40% year over year. When I say MarTech landscape, I mean specifically like number of solutions.
Yeah.
It was actually top of mind for me because a 2018 version of the MarTech landscape came out, I think it was like in April, a couple months ago, so I looked at it. And one of the Brinker's been tracking it since 2011. In 2011, there were 150 solutions. In 2018, the current version, there are 6,800 solutions offered by 6,200 providers. So, you have like people like Salesforce, Adobe, et cetera, who are offering multiple things.
Right.
And I think it's over 48 categories, if I'm not mistaken. So that is really complex. And when you start looking at that, 230 billion industry, people are going to want to get a piece of that, right? So that kind of is setting up my answer a little bit. There's a very non-sexy version of the answer, and then there's a sexy version of the answer. I'm going to do both. The non-sexy version is we're going to have to do more of the same at scale and better.
Yeah.
Data is exploding. I agree with this. Like the number of data points that you can ingest as a product or service or brand is increasing because you've got devices on everybody with a lot of sensors, right? That's your phone or your tablet. So you have all these new telemetry points. Yeah. You have IoT, right? You have cars that do things now, you have refrigerators, you have all these things that are internet-enabled that can tell you things about what that person is doing. You have a number of products and services. Instacart's a great example, or the on-demand services that have a pretty good set of information, like food that you order, when you order food, what quantities. Oh, I know that this person's entertaining. Yeah. Chromecast, Fire TV, like watching habits have changed. It's no longer broadcast, right? So now you have over-the-top services, you have on-demand services. All these things are all data lakes that exist, and there will be a reconciliation at some point where all of that becomes more, hopefully more unified and more federated out of the actual providers that have the data, and then you can paint a much more holistic picture. But the other side of that coin is that you're dealing with probably billions more data points.
Yeah.
So we are going to have to do more of what we're doing now, which is reconciling those data points across identities. And in the B2B space, there's this notion of account-based marketing, right? I mean, in the B2C world, I think about that as like sort of human-based marketing. Like, how do you get all the things you know about a person from all the different places that they interact and pull that together so you have a very holistic view? In the future, I think that's going to have to happen. The data is going to have to come together, scaled in a way that is usable. I think something I'm pretty bullish on is AI and using deep learning. I think a lot of companies and also in the marketing tech space are beginning to incorporate deeper predictive analytics into their products, and with data science being a much more accessible discipline, if you will, and more people train up on it, you're seeing that many companies now have data scientists who are taking these big data sets and making sense of them, and using machines to kind of like sift through that and derive insights. So I think we'll see more of that as well, because that's just going to be a downstream effect of having a lot of data. It's like how do you action on it? So I think AI and machine learning will definitely be a thing that continues to grow. And I think getting into maybe a slightly more sexy stuff is, I think seeing the voice explosion, when I'm talking about Alexa and Google Home and whatnot, is very interesting. We're starting to see some applications there where, with virtual assistants and whatnot, that could be really interesting. Have only seen kind of like some maybe cool tests from companies and how to use that stuff. I would potentially put chatbots in that realm as well, like having Microsoft has done some stuff and with chatbots. Not sure about. I think dark horses are AR, VR, so virtual, augmented, and also MR, mixed reality. Those seem to be maybe stunty if best right now, and I haven't really, but maybe somebody's going to come up with a cool application and do something with that. But I really think it's going to be around the first couple of things. A lot more data, a lot better ways to make sense of that data. Because I just don't see, mobile going away. I don't see a lot of the services and products that people are using going away, and just really getting more inputs and more signal from consumers.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think, as we said before, don't envy you guys and those decisions you have to make, because there's a lot of decisions you could possibly make. What kind of mindset do you have to have when you're thinking about looking at these solutions out in the market? Do you have to have a kind of, I suppose, a testing mentality and try these solutions? Is that part of your obligation and your responsibility in your job, or how do you think about it? Maybe I'll give it with you, Tim. Sorry.
No worries. It's about prioritization. I think Guillaume made a point earlier, which is like, I think, use solutions that were solving the problem that you had at that point in time. The challenging part of some of this is the organization, the companies that we work at have to be in the right place for these things to happen, right? At a certain scale, a certain level of alignment. And I think one of the ways to get to that is by understanding what drives value immediately and how you stitch out a vision and a roadmap for how that builds, into a broader holistic stack. So, I think it's relatively harder to convince your investor, whether it's a CEO or CFO or whoever it is, to plop down on a full stack right up front. So you have to figure out, okay, well, where can I demonstrate, value for this month, this quarter, the next 2 quarters, and really have a very, sort of a watertight case of, hey, we invested in this thing. This is what we saw as a result, and we drove this much enterprise value. Whether it's LTV dollars or engagement or new users, whatever it is. That's why a lot of times paid acquisition or paid media becomes the lead-in, because it's really easy to grok that. Like, hey, we spent some money, we got some people. These people are worth X. But I think that often becomes like the beachhead, and then you kind of work in to deeper life cycle stuff or whatever. But your specific question is like, you have to know what the order of operations is in terms of what solutions and platforms you need, and they can't be treated as silos that feel disconnected. I think I think it's our jobs here to stitch together what that vision is and how everything kind of makes sense as part of a broader strategy.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, thank you. That was a great response. We've got a couple of minutes. So, as I said at the beginning of the session, opportunity to ask these guys some questions. And I think we have a microphone that's going to go around. If anyone's got any questions, please raise your hand. No questions? Oh, we got a couple here. I think, who's got the microphone? Okay, but there's one behind you, sorry, yeah.
Hi, my name is Girish. I'm from Realtor.com. I run analytics there. We're predominantly a lead management business. We bring consumers and real estate agents together. Fascinating discussion. One specific question, I think it was Guillaume that brought it up earlier, which is, what's your approach to striking the right balance between future-proofing some of your investments versus ensuring you're not biting off too much? What's your general approach? And it's maybe not just Guillaume, but the entire panel.
I think you have to be very curious and open-minded to assess new solutions. But at the same time, you don't want to be always talking to new vendors, because otherwise that's all you'll do every day, every single day, like all day, every single day, right? And so I think the way my approach is that I'll try to generally not to talk to too many vendors, but if I talk to 5 people today who I think are smart people and who are doing great things, and they all tell me about one specific solution that I haven't heard of, then I'll try to connect with them and learn more, right? And as I learn more, if I find out that this solution, although it is a great solution, it's not the best solution for me now, I'll keep it in mind, and then when the time comes, then I'll reconnect and try to see if it makes sense for Instacart to work with that partner. And so I think it's really a balance of being willing to learn, and at the same time trying to prioritize what makes sense now versus what will make sense later.
Thank you. I think we might have time for one more question. You had a question at the front? Yeah? Sure. Yeah, a quick microphone at the front, please. Thank you.
Hello. I had so many questions, but I'm going to pick one person. So Noah, my question for you was, what is your re-engagement strategy for users that download the app, become dormant? And how are you applying that to your live events when they show up and then you don't know where they go?
Yeah, absolutely. Re-engagement is probably more critical for a dating app than actual user acquisition is, depending on the size of the dating app. What we do is we do a lot of testing and optimization. For re-engagement, we look at in-app messaging, so pop-ups, modals, or interstitials. We look at push and email, just as traditional re-engagement mechanisms. We look at re-engaging people through Facebook advertising, where we'll offer them a discount on our premium subscription feature, 7 days free if you come back. But actually the most effective channel that we've tried for re-engagement, and this is not always applicable, but I think the idea of it is really valuable to share, is with a dating app, you have messages, right? Someone can message you, you can message someone else. We've set up an automated feature where if you are not engaged in the app after 24 hours, you actually get an in-app message that comes up as a push that it looks like another person has tried to message you, and it's actually a message either from our CEO or from one of our city leads in the 25 cities where we run events. If you're within a 100-mile radius of them, you get that message from them that encourages you to either just use the app, it suggests conversation starters, it gives you a discount on premium, or it invites you to a live event that's in your area that's in the next quarter. And that's such a useful strategy for us. If you kind of break down what people are looking for in a dating app, at the end of the day, all they want is to feel like someone out there in the world cares about them, thinks they're attractive, and wants to have sex with them. So if you really break that down and you can try and basically make one of those things happen for them by giving them a message, giving that like endorphin rush of someone wants me, they're so much more likely to come back. So obviously not applicable for everyone. I don't think that, Tim wants to get people to have sex with each other through his platform, but who knows? So it's really useful.
You got to try different things.
Exactly. Try everything.
Gamers need love too.
Yeah. So when you look at re-engagement, we try and really dig down and figure out what the value proposition is at the core of what people want to get out of a dating app, and then attack that rather than just doing everything that everyone else does for re-engagement. So the interstitials, the modals, they absolutely work for us. The paid Facebook ads, they absolutely work. But what works better better and longer and is more scalable is these in-app messages.
Thank you. I love that we ended on that. That was brilliant. Super valuable. Could we please give the panelists a round of applause?